This company likes stealing things, like it's Hype. Not the Hyte. This is the Hype, which, as you can see, is a modern aesthetic case, just like Hyte's modern aesthetic case with the Y70 and the Y60. And it's a very interesting catastrophe of a case. Ignoring things like the fact that they got their own stock fan counter on in the specs, they also borrow slogans and quotes. For example, the Asus-inspired, but definitely grammatically wrong, created for those who dare to win. Be gamer. And then again, modern aesthetic case. Even the description text is literally copy-pasted. It says chamfered molding on the top and bottom of the chassis ground the case visually and allows for glass-free displays. But not every statement is stolen. GameMAX is nowhere to change the world for good. With over 15 years of experience creating PC cases, with over 10 years experience creating PC cases, be ready, be gamer. And finally, Diamond... What the fuck? We've criticized designs that have been clear ripoffs before, but maybe we've been spoiled because most of the ripoffs we've criticized have at least been legally distinct. Today, GameMAX is here to show us what a real ripoff is, with the Hype HYPE case that looks nearly identical to the Hyte HYTE Y60. It makes the Game DS NISO P1 look like a respectful homage. And actually the Game DS GC7 and the Game DS GC4, actually also the Game DS GC3 and the GC2. Actually, maybe we need to look at Game DS next. But we're talking about Hype today, and it really leaves us dumbfounded because nearly everything in the GameMAX catalog is at least a surface level ripoff. There's some Be Quiet style, some Jonesbow or Anades, plenty of Inwin, a touch of NZXT for style, Cooler Master, Corsair, Cougar, obviously Lian Li, but none of them cross the line between similar and blatant actual theft like the Hype does, and some may be just legitimate coincidences. GameMAX has made some cool designs with some strange names, but unfortunately, we'd be reluctant to review those in the event that they are also stolen. And actually, regardless, we'd be kind of reluctant to review the Diamond COC in general. That stands for cooling and overclocking, by the way, and they say it's patented. But why bother? Before that, this video is brought to you by Arctic and the Liquid Freezer 3, which we've tested using our standard methodology and found to be one of the most noise-efficient CPU coolers on our charts. The Liquid Freezer 3 includes Ryzen offset mounting to improve AMD performance and uses a thicker radiator to further lower the temperatures. Arctic has priced these competitively for AIOs, and you can learn more at the link in the description below. So this case has been somehow around since September of 2023, according to Internet Archive. It's over a year after the Y60 original came out, which is this case, the one that has really gotten critical acclaim. It's been wildly successful for Hyte. The box was already just an obvious enough ripoff, but that isn't even worth talking about when we start looking at how bad the case actually is. This whole thing is this monstrosity where it's like GameMAX, they didn't understand why Hyte did the things they did. This is kind of the start to the problems. It's just this giant bulbous steel panel that kind of floats around up top here like that. For the slotting mechanism, they're just using Phillips head screws, which is creative. You normally see more refinement from a case that costs $150 though. And again, this is, even if you buy it cheap, it's $110 or so on AliExpress. It's kind of expensive ripoff. Inside, they've got these kind of nasty standoffs with screws to hold all the glass panels in place, amateur hour stuff, disposable one-time use PCIe slot covers, afterthought slapped on magnetic dust filters that cover the holes we showed earlier. The top panel on our unit was visibly caved in, the screws holding the cable bar were stripped to varying degrees, and the dust filter at the bottom of the case is impossible to fit correctly into the vent. Massive gaps in between the glass paneling. It's just really not form-fitted. Okay, there we go. Now back to the incorrect spec table, it also notes that front I/O features, quote, buttons. Cool! Reset is wired to the RGB controller out of the box. The lighting can also be controlled with a remote or a motherboard header, but it frequently fails to respond to the remote for mysterious reasons. The reasons are it sucks. But my favorite feature was there's some screws down here. And my first thought was maybe this is like a dust filter or something, but no, actually, it does this. Wait, I didn't want it to go like that. There we go. It does that. Look at that. The case has just become 4 inches shorter. And it looks like we could maybe even hack a little more off still.
It actually looks nicer.
Yeah, I agree. It does kind of look better this way, getting rid of all the misaligned metal. This whole thing is just going to be an extended piss take, by the way. The Hyte Y60 was designed with vertical... Man, that is so much easier compared to what I've been doing for the other one. It was designed with vertical GPUs in mind. You can see that here. They include a riser. They built it and shaped it in a way where the card is out of the way. Hype also has vertical mounting. Unfortunately, this is very close to the glass, so this is going to produce about the worst possible result. Additionally, it is located so close to the fan mount that GPUs of any modern height conflict with it, so we couldn't fit our own testing card in here. It's unnecessarily tall, they don't include a riser, and even if it had worked, the performance would have sucked just because the vertical mount is as close as possible to the glass panel, restricting GPU airflow and pulling the PCIe riser cable across the bottom case vent to also completely block it. And the best part is GameMAX sells drop-in mounting kits that aren't compatible with this case because the bars between the expansion slots don't allow it to fit. The Y60, meanwhile, has only low-profile horizontal expansion slots in order to keep its width down. The Hype has full-size horizontal slots, making it even wider than the Y60, which was already wide. The Hype doesn't take advantage of this extra width in any way, and it actually has reduced fan support versus the Y60, with exclusively 120mm mounts in all the locations according to the spec sheet. But the spec sheet is wrong. Again, they actually have a set of 140mm mounts under... Oh, are these some of the captive ones? That's nice. Look at that, the screw stayed in there. All right, it has some 140 mounts for fans in these rails over here. Now we get to the front panel, which GameMAX says is up to date with USB Type-C. And the best part of this is they say that's capable of 10 gigabits per second, which they say is, quote, 20 times increasing versus 5 gigabits per second. And I don't know what that means. But if it's supposed to be math, for the rest of the front panel, this USB 3 header is singular. It stands alone despite using a full USB 3 cable to connect to the motherboard. So you can get 2 out of this, but why do 2? On the GameMAX products page, the Hype is listed as having 3 pre-installed 120mm ARGB fans, 2 beneath the floor, and 1 at the back of the case. And it's not true for the Hype. That's the stock fan configuration of the Y60, whereas the Hype shipped to us with 2 side and 1 rear exhaust. So that's all 3 as exhaust fans. And it's not a mistake because we bought the case on Amazon and Newegg actually has the same product description, and that's all repeated. There are also small ripoffs too, like GameMAX uses the phrase premium mid-tower ATX PC case, which isn't unique to Hyte, but it is the title of the Y60's product page. Let's find some positives though. There's a generic GPU support that looks sturdy enough. The metal side panel is technically ventilated, and the infinity mirror fans look nice, although you can find similar fans at very low prices on AliExpress. Also, there are touches of construction quality in sparing places, like snaps on the side panels and some captive thumb screws, sometimes with rubber washers, but not all of them are captive. They also ship a decent number of loose Velcro ties in the accessory kit, and that's pretty much it. The case has some neutral aspects, nothing worth calling out for praise though. Building in this case felt like a throwback to 10 years ago, but that's partly because we don't often scrape the bottom of the budget barrel. At least other than the DIY PC Zonda O we reviewed a while ago and weird one-offs like the Coolman 3-body and the Segotep EDI. The EDI is maybe the best comparison because although Hype is built cheaply, it's not cheap. But at least the Zonda O had going for it that it was like $23 at the time, and the Segotep EDI is cool and different, The Coolman 3 body is, as the name suggests, also cool. Otherwise, it'd be illegal. You can't just name it that if it's not cool. But those were different, and this just isn't. But this is a new case, and it must have required brand new tooling to be able to mimic the Y60 this way, which just seems like it'd be more expensive and difficult than designing an original product. Now, I'm going to throw this over to Patrick now, who worked on this review and has some additional thoughts.
Some aspects of the Hype seem like they were copied without actually understanding the original case. So for example, we have a typical two-chamber case design here with the Hyte Y60, which means that the power supply goes down here and two 3.5-inch or 2.5-inch drives can go here. And in a lot of dual-chamber cases, you can maybe swap these or have two power supplies. Meanwhile, in the Hype, we have power supply down here and nothing. This is just empty space. There's a slot for a single 2.5-inch drive to be mounted to the back of the case. The only drive mounting in the case other than that is on this cable bar here. This is something that it shares with the Lian Li 011 family of cases, this cable bar with mounting on it, and it just sucks. There's not enough space. There's not enough space for the drives or the cables. Crucially, the 011 family of cases, the 11D, the newer 011D Evo, they have other drive mounting options. In the Hype, this is all you get. Cable bar and 2.5-inch on the back.
Now we're going to get into the testing. So this is going to be fun. It'll be kind of like a workout for our new case test bench. I'll get to experiment with some numbers, see if our new bench methodology allows for enough range for a truly terrible case to still show its full potential of how much it sucks. And that's what we're gonna get into now. So we'll be going over to thermals, some acoustics, and then we'll wrap this thing up. The conclusion will surprise you. If the Hype has a chance anywhere, it's here, because being a ripoff doesn't mean it has to have bad thermal performance, and the real Hyte Y60 was weak in this area. We did some tests with the two side fans moved to the bottom as intake, in imitation of the Y60, but we weren't able to completely copy the Y60's layout because the vertical GPU mount in the Hype is not designed in a way, unfortunately, that's compatible with our hardware, and we had to supply our own riser cable. We'll start with noise normalized thermals, which puts all cases on the same playing field by reducing their included fan RPM until the total system noise hits a 31 dBA threshold in our hemianechoic chamber. This is done with the included case fans only. The first result is for CPU thermals in a torture workload. The best case on this chart was the Torrent at 46.4 degrees Celsius over ambient. The Hyte Y60 shows a massive increase in thermals as compared to the best of the best on this chart, allowing almost a 10-degree climb from the Torrent. That's a huge swing, but we already knew that the Y60 only ever achieved acceptable performance previously and was rarely among the best. The Hype, however, is actually terrible. It's officially the worst case we've tested with our 2024 methodology we debuted a couple weeks ago. So, congratulations. This case is the reason why we had to so carefully tune the testing. It actually helps us to have a case so bad because any hotter and we'd be in throttling territory, which limits how much visibility we would have into its suckitude because it would be capping the thermals. At 66.6 degrees over ambient, its result is appropriately numerically representative of the temperature inside the case, which is hell for the CPU, at about 89 degrees when including ambient. Even for a copycat, this area of performance has no excuse for being so bad. The GPU thermals in the same test had the Hype down at 54 degrees over ambient. The range for these tests is generally fairly tight between the average cases, with most in the 45 to 48 degree range and the best in the low 40s. The open air testing shows just how restrictive modern power supply shrouds and panels can be to GPU intake, but the Hype result is at the bottom. Hyte's Y60, the real one, is predictably limited here as a result of the vertical mount, something we talked about in our review of the case, but it's still at least acceptable for seating a card back as far as possible. But the Hype case just completely drops the ball, especially considering this is one of the key areas of change from the Y60. This chart includes one of our new tests that we've been excited about with our case review rework. It includes VRM thermals, so that helps show the top of the case and gives us insight if it becomes a hotspot. It also shows the DDR5 RAM thermals with the SPD hub. The Hype continues to impress. It manages, once again, to be the absolute worst performer on the chart, despite copying a case that was at least near the average in this test. The MOSFET we measure ran at 38 degrees over ambient. In an absolute sense, that's fine. It's not bad for that MOSFET, but in the relative sense, that makes this case 10 degrees worse than the best on the chart, and nearly 6 degrees worse than its Inspiration, the Y60. Memory temperatures are also massively increased here, with a ginormous jump from the previous worst on the chart, the Pop Air, to 31 degrees over ambient. That's about 10 degrees hotter than the Y60. That means if you're running particularly hot memory, or you were trying to overclock while buying a rip-off case for some reason, then you actually might limit the headroom for the memory. Now we'll increase the fan speeds of the case fans to 100% on all tested cases, leaving the GPU and the CPU fans controlled. Looking at GPU thermals, the Hyte case, despite having absolutely terrible CPU thermals in this test, not shown here, managed to at least tie with the Hyte Y60 for GPU thermals. Moving to bottom intake instead resulted in a better outcome for the GPU, which makes sense since it gets it closer to the card for intake, and we actually get some fresh air flowing into the case in a controlled way. But even still, as the Hyte fails to even understand the mechanical attention to detail of the Hyte case's smaller details, it also fails to deliver better performance. But it still costs $110 to $160 before shipping, and shipping was as high as $200 depending on what site you buy it from. For us, it was just $150 total, but there's simply no reason to buy this case. It was, however, a great workout for a new case testing methodology. One note we found was that the Hyte's fans in the bottom of the case caused an audible rushing sound of wind because of all the layers of steel and mesh. The conclusion won't surprise you. This was an extended piss take, as said earlier, and the case is not something we can recommend. It's too expensive to be a worthwhile knockoff. Even if they sold it for $80, you'd be better off buying a legitimate $80 case or a different knockoff for $80 that at least tries to do some things kind of well. So it's weird because it's not our job to defend the honor and the intellectual property and the integrity of the IP of the companies whose cases we review, and it's not your job either. But even in a vacuum, this case is just bad enough that you shouldn't buy it anyway. If it were the first of this design type, it still wouldn't do well, and actually it appears to be getting scrubbed from retail sites, at least in the US that we visit, as we've been working on this review, and maybe for a good reason. But even still, with regard to the literal copy and pasting of marketing text and everything else, in the US at least, it's definitely theft of intellectual property, and there's probably an argument for being confusingly similar. But they don't operate in the US, and it's extremely unlikely Hyte would ever pursue a company internationally, especially when that lawsuit is unlikely to yield anything that matters. But there's a lesson here. There is actually something valuable that comes out of the end of relentlessly making fun of this thing for the last 20 minutes or whatever this has been. And the lesson is that we really do mean it when we say the effort put into this copy is still high enough that that same effort should have been put into making anything else that's at least somewhat original, and then trying to make a name for GameMAX that isn't based on someone else's name, because, and we really do mean this, it's actually unfortunate now that because of this experience with this case and seeing some of the other blatant ripoffs, we don't feel comfortable reviewing any of GameMAX's products because we can't be certain that they haven't just stolen it from someone. And if it's not a design that's extremely well known, like the Y60 is, it's possible you stumble across something, you go, oh wow, that's actually a pretty cool design, maybe we'll give them another shot, up until the fact that, again, we have to consider, based on their history, they are probably just stealing the ideas. The line with copycats and follow-ons in the industry is pretty gray and murky. You see it all the time with the 011 and all the clones that came after that, and the ones that are now following the Y60. But in this case, the line, GameMAX has gone so far past it that it is 100% clear exactly what this case was trying to be. And so anyway, the take-home lesson, if we try to apply one to something like this, is just try. If you're gonna do anything like this, just actually make something new. So that's it for this one. It was kind of fun to work on just because, I don't know, I feel like I went back in time about 15 years. So if you have other cases like this you want us to look at, post them in the comments and we'll buy them, whether it's worth the money or not. And thanks for watching. Subscribe for more. Go to store.gamersnexus.net to help us out directly. We'll see you all next time.